Welcome to Peninsula Seniors Out and About. We're back in Beverly Hills at the Greystone Mansion for the 2016 Concours d'Elegance. Let's go have a look at some of the rare cars. I'm here with Jeff Brynan, and you're one of the organizers. You are the main guy for the cars.
Well, thank you. I don't know about main guy, but I help recruit all the cars for the event, and my wife's the director of the event. So she does everything else, and I help with the cars.
Okay, and how many cars do we have here today?
We actually have the most cars we've ever had at this event. We have 136 cars. We actually had to eliminate some seating areas because we're fortunate to get over 220 applications, and we didn't want to turn too many people away, so we added some spots and got to 136.
Awesome, awesome. And how many classes?
There's 18 classes.
What a variety of cars, and they're rare cars.
Yeah, we're very fortunate, I think, because where we're located here in Beverly Hills, Greystone Mansion, there really is quite literally countless world-class collections just within spitting distance of the venue, and everybody's so kind to support the event and enter their car that as much as I like to take more credit, a lot of it is just the kindness of everybody in the car community.
And the money goes to the Greystone Mansion. Can you talk a little bit about the
Sure.
Friends of the Mansion?
Sure. It's the event is a City of Beverly Hills event, and it's done in conjunction with the Friends of Greystone, which is a charity to raise funds for the ongoing restoration and preservation of the Doheny estate, which was built in the 1920s for the eldest son of the Doheny family. And if I remember correctly, at the time it was the most expensive house then constructed in the state of California. And over the years it kind of had gone to seed, and around the year 2000 my wife was put in charge of doing special events here to raise money. And things are pretty all up to speed again at the estate. A few things still left to do, and but it's all functional again.
Well, there's been TV shows, there's been commercials. I mean, like X-Men. There's been quite a few.
Yeah, the estate actually for years was leased out to the American Film Institute. And as you say, yeah, the movie There Will Be Blood was filmed here. Everything from that to the Garfield movies. So you've seen this mansion in countless things. And it's usually not open to the public, but at this event, the mansion's open, all the grounds are open. So our feeling is it's a unique event in that if you don't like cars, there's the gardens to see, there's the mansion to see, food's included. We think it's tough not to have a good time.
Well, getting back to the event here.
Sure.
The Concours, what did you bring today?
We brought today this car behind us. It's a Fiat Abarth. The model is a 1000 GT BL Devereaux. It's a pretty rare car. Its claim to fame, I think, is its history. It was owned originally and part of the Briggs Cunningham racing team. It participated in the 1961 campaign where Abarth won its first championship trophy. The car won several points. Its biggest, again, claim to fame was it was driven by Bruce McLaren himself to a victory over Sterling Moss.
Awesome.
And I have to admit, probably the highlight of my collector car experience is I got to meet Sterling Moss and actually ask him if he remembered my car, which he did, and commented that had he had more horsepower that day, he would have beaten McLaren. And I was shocked he remembered the race, and he remembered it instantaneously. So it was really quite a thrill to have Sterling Moss know your car.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was very exciting.
Well, can you give us a closer-up look?
Sure. This is our little Fiat Abarth. It was, again, owned by Briggs Cunningham, the Briggs Cunningham racing team. The car was race prepared by Alfred Momo, who many of you may have heard of, Momo Racing Steering Wheels. He race prepared the car. The car was, as I mentioned, driven to a victory at Sebring by Bruce McLaren. It's an all-aluminum bodied car. It's got plexiglass windows. Probably the biggest feature of it is the rear end of the car, which has drawn a lot of attention from local police. The car is street legal, but it is a race car, and the rear engine deck lid is kept in an upright position, which seems to always draw a little interest from the local police. They can't quite understand how a car like this is on the road, but DMV says it can be, so they've given me a pass each time. You can see it's kept in this somewhat upright position and has this little cage below here that keeps it up. It was originally done because they thought this would help cool the engine more and increase performance. Turned out it didn't, but they thought that it increased the aerodynamics, so they left it like this. And as I noted about the police, this is the one feature that seems to draw their attention repeatedly, that you can't drive a car around like this. And after explanation, they usually let me go. But that's one of the more interesting things about the car, I guess, that design. And other than that, it's just a very lightweight car. Again, it's an all aluminum body, very Spartan inside. The side windows are plexiglass for reduced weight, and very successful car on the race course back in the early 60s. I would have to say it's probably the hardest car to drive that I've ever driven, because it really is a race car. It has a racing clutch. It's so overly carbureted that if you don't keep the revs up at all times, it'll stall out at any time. It has a very odd shift pattern. The car was recently in Pebble Beach, and we got to go on the tour with it. So I actually practiced for a few days before we went up, because I wanted to make sure I could actually drive it without making a fool of myself in front of all the Pebble Beach entrants. And I guess I was successful, because the car's back here in one piece. So it really is just a fun little car to have and to enjoy, and especially the history of it is just fascinating to me. And I think that's in large part what the collector car hobby's about, is maintaining all these vintage cars and the history that goes with them. And that really comes back full circle to why we put on this event. This kind of car is a huge reason why we have this event and participate in the vintage car hobby. Besides all the wonderful people you meet, it's the chance to see cars that you just don't see anymore. You're not going to see them on the street. You can't go in a showroom and see them. And they really show cars are a big part of everybody's life, especially in Los Angeles. It's the car capital of the world. And so you get to see stuff that seeing its day, passing on, because the world's becoming dominated by electric cars, and self-driving cars are coming, and Uber may take over the world soon, but we try to make an effort to expose all these wonderful cars and just the tremendous enthusiasts that come here, so everybody can see the history of automobiles, which are such a huge part of everybody's life. So we hope everybody's enjoying the show, and this has been our 7th year, and we hope to be back again to do it all, and hope you can all join us.
I'm here with Arnold Schmidt. It's good to see you again, Arnold.
Oh, it's great to see you, Betty.
And what did you bring to the concours here in Beverly Hills?
We brought a 1903 Thomas.
And who do you represent here?
Ron and Sandy Hansen.
Can we have a little closer up look of the car?
Certainly. This is a 1903 Thomas, and we'll start here at the front. This original headlight is a self-generating carbide light. There's a little water tank. You put water in it, and it'd flow down over the carbide and create your own acetylene gas, and then you would light that. And then from there we go back. This is called a French-style hood, and this is a Model 18 Thomas, 1-cylinder, 8 horsepower, 3-speed transmission, 1 reverse. And then below here's the radiator. And this is one of the most advanced American cars of the day. It was $1,400 in 1903, and they built several hundred of them. On the Thomas, it has these white tires, because the rubber is originally white, and that's how they came. Black tires didn't come in till several years later. And then we go back, here's the side lamps, and these are kerosene side lamps, and they were made to take off so you could use them as a flashlight. A lot of the times they took them off to go milk the cows. and then continue on back. It's a parasol basket here, and then the side baskets to store your coats like this. They were called dusters. On the rear of the Thomas is called a Kingus Belgium style body built by Sheldon Motor Works. And then on the back, how it opens so your rear passengers can get in, and that's the entrance into it. And originally these were parasol baskets, and also they have a set of golf clubs too. Okay, on the dash of the Thomas, this is the oiler, and you flip up all these lubricators, and two of them do the engine and the cylinder, and this does the transmission. And it's called a total loss system. Whatever oil goes in it has been thrown out. And then this is the ignition switch here, and the ignition coil box here. And then controls on the car doesn't have a foot throttle, it's a hand throttle. And then the spark is controlled here, advance and retard. And then you got typical clutch and brake. The Thomas has the horn here, and then it has a tilt wheel like that for easy access. The engine is a 1-cylinder, 8 horsepower, and it's underneath the driver and the passenger here. And then there you can see the engines here and the transmission there. It's chain drive to the rear axle. On starting the Thomas is kind of a process. It has a compression release, and you have to pull the choke and hand crank it to load the cylinder with gasoline before you turn the ignition on. And once you do that, then you turn on all the oilers, turn the ignition on, and then hand crank it. And it should start. As far as driving the Thomas, it's kind of complicated because of the hand throttle, but it's a typical clutch. We have 3-speed transmission, and that's the gear shift here. You put it in first gear and take off. And the car is fairly fast with a 3-speed transmission. Top speed is 30 miles an hour for a 19.3 car, and it has a 1-wheel brake. So braking is a challenge.
I'm here with Jay Leno. Good to see you again, Jay.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
What'd you bring to the Beverly Hills Concours?
This is a 1934 Duesenberg. This is the Walker Coupe. It's the first aerodynamic Duesenberg done in a wind tunnel. I think it's the only one done in a wind tunnel. And Herbert Newport was a designer. I mean, it's a Duesenberg underneath. It's just got the custom body on it. It's the only one they built like that.
You've had it for a while. How come this is a keeper for you?
Well, every car I have is a keeper.
Okay.
I haven't sold one yet, so
Okay.
Yeah, actually they're
Good
all
to know.
keepers.
Good
They're
to
all
know.
keepers. Yeah.
It's a beautiful car. Can we have a closer up look?
Sure. Well, these headlights, although they look like implants on a bad stripper, they're actually more aerodynamic than if they were actually in the fender, because they had experimented with having in the fender, but they found it was more aerodynamic to go this way. So it's the first use of real aerodynamics, not as opposed to just style. If you look at the back of the car, there's no exterior handle, so the air cuts through. As you can see, the grille pretty tricky to make. Each one of those is offset 1 degree, so it makes it a little difficult to, if you have an accident, you're not going to find one. That was probably the toughest part to make, the grille. It's a big, heavy car, as you can see from the 4 hinges on there. And the rear taillights just are knife edge, so the air cuts through them. So it's a true aerodynamic coupe, and it just looks like something Cruella de Vil would drive, in one of those Disney movies.
Jay, what's it like to drive?
Well, it drives very nicely, actually. It drives like a Duesenberg. I mean, it's a heavy car, but it has a lot of power. I mean, 75, 80 on the freeway is no problem with it. You can drive it like a modern car, but there's absolutely no room in it. There's no trunk space in it. There's about as much room as this as there is in an MG, except you just have taking up 10 times as much space. So the roof is leather, and when it got wet, you go back to the deal and they put a leather roof on. It's like throwing silver dollars in the ocean. This belonged to Josiah Lilly, who was Eli Lilly's son. He didn't drive. He had the car commissioned, and when he got it in 1934, people threw rocks at him because you're driving this in the middle of the Depression, and he was very conservative, so he quickly got rid of it after 6 months. Then it went to England. When I got it, it was a tow truck. It had a big tow truck hook in the back, and we restored it, and that was that. Randy Ema, actually, the great Duesenberg guy, he did the restoration for me. So.
I'm here with Craig Eckberg. And what did you bring to the Beverly Hills Concours today?
A 1952 Allard J2X.
You found this in Palos Verdes at the Coffee and Cards there.
I did. It showed up with the owner of the car. He had owned it 20 years and had his grandson, and I had to have it, so I made him an offer on it. And fortunately, 6 months later, I got a phone call saying, I think I'm ready to sell.
Wow, so you planted the seed and he went for it.
He finally did. It took a week of negotiations to finish it, and more, not money, but the love of his car, letting it go.
Meaning you'd take care of it.
I'm the new caretaker.
Well, tell us about the history of the car.
Well, Sidney Allard is an English gentleman that was building race cars starting in the 40s. The J2X is the most popular of the cars. He ran a J2X in Le Mans in 1951, got a third place with it, and was a very successful race car for the era.
And I understand Shelby was involved with this in some way.
Well, Carroll Shelby was actually a team driver for Sidney Allard, and the Allard is an aluminum-bodied English car with an American V8, and that was a very winning combination against the C and D-type Jaguars and the Ferraris of the era. Carroll Shelby, driving this car 10 years later, came up with the fantastic idea of taking an English aluminum-bodied car and putting an American V8 horsepower in it, thus the Cobra.
Wow, you've got a monster here.
400 horsepower in a nice little car. It's just about the right power combination for me.
Can we have a closer-up look?
Sure. They have a very unique look to them. They're distinctive. They only built 77 of these cars. All English bodywork, Lucas Lighting, Lucas Electrics. They have a Dion rear end in it, and of course they're famous for having American V8 power. This one has a fairly rare Chrysler Hemi 331 in it, coupled to a 4-speed transmission, and it is a fantastic race car. I have seen these things for years, being a car collector. Never took too much of an interest. I had heard they didn't handle so well, and a friend of mine bought one, and we mixed it up on the Colorado Grand a couple times. Became better friends. I've ridden in his car or co-drove with him on at least 6 of the Colorado Grand, so I've got better than 6,000 miles of seat time in one. Decided I needed to have one for myself. So went out, purchased the car, which I explained earlier, and they are absolutely a fantastic sports car for the era. I can't imagine anything I would rather have. People actually stopped texting to look at the car.
I'm here with Bruce Meyer, and what did you bring to the Concours today?
Well, we brought our 1935 Bugatti right here, and it's a Jean Bugatti design. It's called a Ventoux, and a lot of Bugatti's cars were named after high mountain alpine passes, so there's a very famous pass called the Ventoux. But what we love about this car is that it has a very laid-back windshield and a very sleek design. So in 1935, you'd be rolling with this car.
How'd you happen on this car?
That's a really good question, because I came across the car in the early 90s. And the interesting thing about this car, it was called one of the Sleeping Beauties. The car was found in a barn in France, and it was there for 40 years, completely untouched. And a very famous restorer by the name of André Lecoq found the car and restored it. And he restored half of it to start with, and then the other half. So I tried to buy it when it was half restored, because I thought that was pretty cool, right down the middle. And so from there it went to a museum in Austria for a number of years, and I bought it about 6 years ago from the museum in Austria.
Very patient.
Yeah, I waited a long time for this one. But when we drive it, it's a very drivable car, and it has cable brakes, which isn't the best for stopping. But anyways, it's a fun car, and we thought it kind of was appropriate today, kind of the 30s,
Absolutely.
roaring 20s.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Can we have a closer-up look?
Sure. This is a 1935 Bugatti Ventoux, and I think what distinguishes Bugatti most is the horseshoe grille. This is very Bugatti. Even the new Veyrons has this shape. So every Bugatti, this is kind of their signature shape. And it has a dual overhead cam, 8-cylinder engine, very powerful for its day, for the late 20s and early 30s. Some of them were supercharged. This one is actually not supercharged. This is a 4-passenger with suicide doors. in the very traditional Bugatti black and yellow. And those were very kind of signature colors for Bugatti. So this is what makes the Bugatti go. This is a 8-cylinder dual overhead cam, powerful engine for its day. And the interesting thing is the design came from Los Angeles, California, because Harry Miller was really the guy that figured out dual overhead cams, and he picked it up from Peugeot. So Peugeot was like the real master of dual overhead cams, then Harry Miller, and then Jean Bugatti. Ettore Bugatti bought a Miller engine, and this is scaled after a Miller engine, so it has roots from America. And it's just a very simple thing. It's what they call scraped. They engraved it. This car is extremely original. So what you see is not over-chromed or over-polished. It's pretty much as it would be in the period. So these are what are called suicide doors, and I guess the reason is if it opens when you're driving, it's not a good thing. Maybe like suicide, but it makes it easy entry, so it's easy to get into. Another wonderful feature is this car comfortably seats 4 people, so you can travel with your friends and tour with your friends. And the seats are like designer chairs, and those were very signature Bugatti seats. Very simplistic, just a handsome approach. And the dash is obviously wood and beautiful chrome. And one wonderful thing about Bugatti's interiors are they're very simplistic, not overdone, just what you need, all the right gauges, set in a beautiful wooden dash. And the steering wheel and the horn button in the middle, everything is just basic and beautiful. It has twin rear spare tires. Back in the early days, you had flat tires, and we have a couple of spares there. You have to think 1935. And I can tell you the tire technology was not what it is today. And you were getting constant tire punctures and tire problems. So in this car, having the 2 spares made it, even better for touring. God forbid you had 2 flat tires. You got backup. Other than that, it's just pretty much what you see is what you get, but it has a great roar to it. I wish we could start it up and take you for a ride, but pretty impressive.
I'm here with Jim Hull, and you're all in green.
Not all. I usually wear a green shirt too.
Okay.
But no, I do love green.
And you're in green and you have a green car. And what did you bring to the Concours today?
A 1927 Essex boat tail speedabout, which is obviously bright green.
And you've got some green on too. Can you tell about that?
Well, I wear green every day of the year. Green to me is just a happy color, and it has been for at least 40 or 50 years of my life, okay?
The car that you brought, can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Well, it's very unique, and one reason why I have this car is that no one knows how many they made. There's only 10 left in the world, but every one of the first series of them was bright green with black fenders. And so when I saw that, and I was looking for an American-made kind of sporty sports car, because I have other 1920s and 30s cars, but they're a lot harder to work on, and so I wanted something like this, and now I am pleased. It took me 2 years after I bought it to get it really running right and everything. But
do you know the history of the car?
Yeah, Essex was made by Hudson, and it was supposed to be their lower end line, and it started out in 1919, and in 1925 they put a 6-cylinder engine in it when Ford and Chevrolet were still 4 cylinders. So it was the 3rd best-selling car in the U.S. in 1925, 26, 27. Well, then when the Depression came after 29, sales, of course, went way down. So in 31, they had to cancel the whole brand. These were only made in 27, and there are 2 or 3 individual ones made in later years. So there's only 10 known in this country and 2 outside the rest of the world.
Can you give us a closer-up look?
Sure. By the way, one feature of this car that I didn't say yet is that it was owned by one family from 1927 to 2003. And in 2000, one of the family members, they lived in Florida, took on the project to restore it. But every single piece, from the horn to this extra light to the bumpers to everything is exactly like it was brand new. So it's probably the most original speedabout, which is what their name for it was, in the world. It has a wonderful 6-cylinder engine. This is what makes me love to drive it too. This is with its optional twin carburetor setup. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The air cleaners are covering the spark plugs, but anyway. In the brochure at the time, they said this car had a special high-geared rear end and would go 80 miles an hour. Well, I don't know that it'll really go 80 yet. I just got it really running well 3 days ago, so other than driving it on the street a little bit, I haven't given it a real speed run. But it's hard to go that fast in cars with wooden spoke wheels. The problem with a 100-year-old almost wooden wheel that is sat a lot of time, they eventually get rotten. So I think these wheels were made new when they were restored to car. I hope so, because when I go around turns, I don't like to slow down, so I don't want to see them collapse or feel them collapse. So you see, they are what's called a lock ring, but you take these nuts off here and you can take the wheel off, and there is a wheel in the back, the boat tail of the car back there. So as you can see, it is a 2-passenger only car. If you had a child or a mother-in-law, you didn't put her in the rumble seat because it didn't have a rumble seat. And, you know, it's one reason why they didn't sell a lot of these cars, because it was pretty impractical in those days. But no one knows how many they really sold. Anyway, you can see that it's absolute original wooden steering wheel and that whole knob on the top and the plated just like that. It was very kind of understated. It doesn't have much chrome on the body, as you see, just handles and stuff like that. Anyway, it is a comfortable car for me. However, I did have to lower the seat about 4 or 5 inches because most people were shorter back in those days. So I was looking over the top because I have kind of a tall body. Now it's very comfortable, and those kind of little changes no one cares about. Anyway, it has a full top. It has side curtains. I'm taking this on a rally a week from now, and it could rain, so the good thing is you can put the top up and then this side curtain that goes on the side, which is canvas and plastic, and even not get wet, which is amazing because I have an open Bugatti that I've taken my wife all over the world in, and when it rains, we're in it. There's no getting away from it. So this is the most important feature of this car and what makes it really unique. It was called the Essex Super 6 for its 6-cylinder engine, but a boat tail, of course there's the shape of the boat tail, but it was officially known as a speedabout. The reason this car is special is not because of the name, but because it is one of only a handful of these boat tail models that they came out with in 1927. Every one of the first ones was bright green and black. This was called their speedabout model. And it wasn't really very practical because, of course, you couldn't sit in there, but the spare tire is inside there. Anyway, I just kind of fell in love with it. Now this was made, it was the first American production boat tail car, as far as I know, and I'm waiting for someone to set me straight on that. In 1928, Auburn came out with a boat tail speedster, which became very well. That was a big seller because I think it also had a rumble seat so that you could put the mother-in-law back there. Anyway, I just kind of like the shape of it and the fact that it's reasonably speedy for its date. Although it is a little bit hard for me to get into this car, once I'm in it and I'm looking right through that windshield, it is a very comfortable car for 2 people. It's a small car. I mean, if you look at the other roadsters in this line of American pre-war cars, this car is a lot smaller. Now, it is longer than a Model A Ford, which of course came about in 1928 and 29. But this was still in the Model T era, and Model Ts were absolute boxes, you know, then, and they were 22 horsepower and went about maybe 40 miles an hour. I don't know. So this was a very modern car and innovative for its time, and I guess that's why I like it, because first of all, I like green. Secondly, I'm a designer, and I have a boat-tailed Bugatti also, but that's a 300 horsepower, 140 mile an hour car from 1935. Anyway, it's fun car.
I'm here with Irwin Thaler. And what did you bring to the Concours today?
I brought this dual Ghia, this dark blue dual Ghia behind us.
Is there a story as to how you happened to buy it?
Yeah, I've always been interested in foreign cars with American engines. Dual Ghias, similar to a Fossil Vega, have American engines in foreign cars. And I started looking around. I saw this one for sale. It wasn't in this condition, of course. And I ended up buying it.
Can we have a closer-up look?
Sure. Well, these cars were based on a 1956 Dodge chassis with an Italian Ghia body. It's actually an American car. In the 50s, Chrysler would prepare a dream car for their car shows, and Ghia would do the bodies. They made one called a Fire Arrow, and also another one called a Firebomb, which was similar to this. When they decided not to go into production, remember, this is around the time the T-Birds and Corvettes went into production. When they decided not to go into production, Gene Casero, who was the owner of Dual Motors, approached them and got permission to get 1956 Dodge chassis off the assembly line. And he would then ship them to Italy, where Ghia would put the bodies on, and they would come back here and he sold them. There were about 117 made, and there's only about 30 of them left. It was the car, the stars, Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Lyndon Johnson, Mickey Cohen, the gangster. It was a pretty popular in Hollywood type of car. The person I bought this from told me her son had found it in Europe. He said it was Ava Gardner's car. I've tried to confirm it. I've been unable to confirm it. Although I did call the Ava Gardner Museum, which I found online, and they did say she was living in Europe at the time. I wrote to her while she was still alive. I never got a response. But it was definitely one of the Rat Pack cars, I believe. Now, if you look at the front of the car, it has a large opening and small grills on either side. And the most interesting feature for me, the badge on the top that says Dual Motors. It has a crossed Italian and American flag signifying the marriage of the American chassis and the Italian body. They were basically a one-year car. They started at the very end of '56 and were made in '57 and a few in '58, but it's basically a year. They made 117 of them and about 30 remain. The car, although it was based on styling from the mid-'50s or maybe even starting in the early '50s, is pretty subtle compared to some of the '50s cars. It does have fins, which is a big feature in the '50s. As you know, many cars had started with fins, but in my opinion, they're done quite tastefully. The fins aren't too extreme. And it has vents on the side. It has a lot of styling you see on European cars, Ferraris and Maseratis of that period, this scoops, vents, and things like that. Very large air intake on the car. The engines that Dual Ghias came with were 1956 Dodge V8s, 315 cubic inches. There's two versions of that motor, both 315 cubic inches. One is what's called a polyspherical engine. The other was the legendary Hemi engine. The Hemi engine, if you wanted that option back then, was $100 extra. Quite a bargain considering everything. This engine is a later motor that I put in the car, but the engine compartment has been done to stay with the period look. This large plate in front, aluminum plate, is actually a cover, and the battery is contained in here. This is the original cover from the car. A little beat up, but not too bad. But the object was they wanted to move the engine as far back as possible for good handling, and it works pretty well. If you look at the interior, the steering wheel is from a 1957 Chrysler, as are the mirrors. And on the side of each door is a round chrome disc on both doors. That disc is there because the original cars had wind-up windows. And these cars were very expensive for the time, and the wealthy purchasers complained about that, and they were recalled, and power windows were fitted. The power window switches are just on the bottom of the dash in the middle. The dashboard itself is what's called polished turned metal, and looks kind of aircrafty, but it fits the car pretty well.
I'm here with Deborah Rader, and what'd you bring to the Concours today?
I brought a 1974 Citroen Devereaux.
And how did you happen to buy this car? I understand there's quite a story.
Well, 25 years ago when my husband and I first went to Paris, they were everywhere. And I thought they were so adorable, and there was one whose name was Georgette, and she was driven by an older lady, and I loved it. And over the past 2 decades, we've been looking for a Devereaux, and this one came available in January at the RM auction, and we bought it. And a dear friend sent me this hat, and also matching berets for my 2 golden retrievers, which are my usual passengers.
Can we have a closer up look?
Sure. So this is a 1974 Devereaux. It's the 2 CV6, which I think has the bigger engine. My husband likens it to driving a lawnmower with a body on it, and it's so much fun. I've wanted one for years. I've wanted a Charleston, and I got it 2 months ago, and today was my first trip on the freeway, and I thought that I was driving 80 miles an hour with my husband following me, and then we realized it was kilometers and I was only going 48 miles an hour, which seemed like 80 miles an hour in this car. These windows are really cute. You can be driving and you just flip it up, and that's how you open and close your windows. And they just stay up until you take them down. This is your air conditioning, and it's got a very basic French 4-speed on the dash, which is counterintuitive to anything that we're used to driving. It's totally backwards. I have really had to take a concentrated effort to learn how to drive it, but it's a lot of fun. So this is the back, this is a trunk, and it has a full back seat. And my usual passengers are 2 golden retrievers with matching berets to mine. This morning, I drove it on the freeway for the very first time from Playa del Rey, and it gets a lot of smiles with my golden retrievers in it and their matching berets to my hat with their little chin straps. We get a lot of looks, we have a lot of fun with it, and I'm just thrilled that I was able to buy it.
They only made the Sunbeam Tigers from 1964 to 1967. Why? Because they bought a bunch of engines from Ford, and then about halfway through the process, Roots Company, who made Sunbeam Tigers, they needed investors. So they came up with investor of Chrysler Company, of all things. They didn't like the fact that their competitor's engine was in their car. So they let it run out of string until about middle of 1967 when the last engine was available, and they shut it down, and that was the end of the Sunbeam Tigers, and the Sunbeam period. Well, before the GTs were made, the dashes were metal, but that was one of the features they put on the GT was this beautiful burlwood dash, and it looked so great that Sunbeam adopted it for their future cars, used it for the rest of the run. I love the toggle switches, they're all functional. The gauges, they're really clear and easy to read. And that's an original steering wheel, it's been restored, original shifter. Original interior has been redone, obviously. It's not the original, but it's the style it was in the time. And it's just a beautiful looking car. This is the back of the Sunbeam Tiger. As you can see, it's a 2-seater. Now there is a parcel seat kind of back in the back, but it's really for parcels, groceries. You couldn't put a human back there. I don't even think a small kid could fit back there. There's no seat belts. But the 2 seats do have seat belts and they're quite comfortable. And it has a full trunk with a lot of room in there. I have a lot of storage for things that I need, like a car cover and things like that. One of the little interesting features, I have a toolkit that was signed by Carroll Shelby. Carroll Shelby, of course, is the designer of the Sunbeam Tiger. He's the one who engineered to figure out how to get a Ford V8 into it. And he signed his toolkit for the prior owner, and I got it now to go along with. In addition, I had the certificate from Norman Miller. He is the guru of Sunbeam Tigers, and he looked it over and confirmed that it was an original Sunbeam Tiger, the only one that's been certified by the Tiger Association Club, Tiger Automotive Club, TAC, and it's one of 11 left in the world. 15 made, but only 11 left in the world, because obviously a couple of them crashed or broke down or rusted or whatever. Anyway, so it's nice to have the certificate to show it's all genuine, matching numbers, engine, etc. Well, it's a Ford V8 and a very light, small car. As you can imagine, it's quite quick. It has 4 speeds. That's the original 4-speed. It's really quick, and it's really quick touring. I can't wait to get out in the canyons after the show is over, because this car is made for going around canyons and going around turns. It's a great riding car. It's a little bit bouncier than some of my other cars because of the shorter wheelbase, but you make up for it by being able to turn on a dime. It's a lot of fun to drive.
Thank you for watching Peninsula Seniors Out and About. I'm Betty Wheaton. See you next time.